Hi, I'm Diane.
And I'm Johnny.
And you're listening to
Paranoid Fantasy, the podcast about bizarre things
and the people involved.
Hey, you might have noticed we actually changed our name. It's our second podcast, but our first idea was the cult commune, but we're just going to put that on the shelf right now and focus on lots of different stories. All these stories that we're talking about, we are like the champion for the underdog. If you've been accused of something crazy, hasn't been really proven, or you're just a cult figure or somebody on the outside, we want to give you the benefit of the doubt.
Well, it's easy to make a knee-jerk reaction about things, so I'm really excited about this, John.
I love people that are different, and so I think we should get started. Tell us about what we're talking about today, Diane.
Well, today our first story, we'll be talking about cinnamon oil, mink-lined handcuffs, and chloroform.
So you must be talking about the manacled Mormon case.
That's right.
Joyce McKinney.
Mm-hmm. It seems that a young Mormon missionary, his name was Kurt Anderson, went missing on September 14th in 1977 after he allegedly was abducted from the steps of a meeting house, of all places, the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints.
Oh my God. We've all been there.
I know. I hate it when that happens. Apparently, a man named Keith May, he was 24 years old at the time, he posed as an investigator into Mormonism, using a fake handgun and chloroform. 3 days later,
No. How he didn't use the chloroform? Someone else did.
Well, somebody else supplied it.
We don't really know.
No, because that's one of the discrepancies in the case. Some people say, how could a woman as little as
our heroine
abduct a big man like Mr. Keith, no, like Mr. Kirk Anderson. I just don't butcher in this.
Well, let's just take a break and listen to the woman who is the subject at hand, Miss Joyce McKinney.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I'll be honest, I got into her from her Netflix documentary, but she reminds me of a close friend, so I can't help. Here we go. This is her speaking in 2010 about love.
But the thing I always resented so much is when these reporters would use the word obsession. I wasn't any different than any woman in this auditorium. I was looking for that magical guy. Don't we all, ladies? That handsome prince.
Well, okay, there you have it. That's at the Doc NYC Festival, just so, we can credit those people. But let's just say this woman was cut from a different cloth.
Yeah, indeed she was.
And had no shame.
Oh, not at all.
So our story starts with she's abducting someone from a Mormon church.
Yeah, she fell in love with this man. It was love at first sight. He was getting ready to go on his mission trip as a Mormon, and the elders of that church transferred him to England. She took that as that they were trying to separate them.
Right.
And like any woman would do, she got 3 friends together, some chloroform, some cinnamon oil, and hopped a plane over there. Now, when 2 of the guys figured out what was going on, they came back to America.
Yeah, they pretty much jumped ship.
They did, but Keith May, boy, he hung in with her, and he's the one that actually got charged with the chloroform and actually stealing him off the steps. And he apparently took him to Joyce.
So he was kind of like the reverse hitman. Instead of going after the guy, yeah. He actually wanted to be like the love maker. I mean the love connector.
Yeah, that's exactly what he did. And I don't know. I don't think she really paid him anything either. I think he was just kind of infatuated with Joyce. That's my own opinion from some of the reading I've done.
So she must have been pretty charismatic, because not only could she attract men, because she had like a previous career as a pinup, and probably, I mean, it infers a prostitute.
Yeah, one of the newspapers later did dig into her past, and they said that's how she funded her trip.
Oh, perfect. Well,
she was a former Miss Wyoming World in 1973, so she was very attractive.
So she was pretty confident.
Yeah, she was. Well, Keith took this young missionary who had just left America on his first trip, and he deposited him at this little cottage where Joyce was, and he was gone. He was there for like 3 days. He told people when he came out that he had finally asked her to marry him, and that's why they released him. But what he told the police was that Joy McKinney had attempted to seduce, and then she raped him.
All
that
right. So
funny?
he defended her, or he was.
He was saying that he got away from her by telling her that, and then he reported that he had been raped. And the reason I was laughing about that, I know it's not very appropriate, but there's a quote that she said, how does a woman rape a man? It'd be like sticking a marshmallow in a parking meter. So, I mean, that just came to my mind, and that's why I started laughing when you said it.
Oh yeah, I think she's pretty quick-witted. So they arrest her?
Oh, yeah, actually, the police, when they heard the story, they set up a sting operation, and then they arrested them. And the case then became known as the Madam Mayhem and the Manacled Mormon case.
This was pretty much like front page news
Oh, yeah.
all over the UK.
Yeah. I mean, when they picked him up, people immediately were gathering and taking pictures because they noticed Joyce had a sign and it said, Kirk left me willingly. And people saw that going by in the police car, and the media soon was kind of involved.
See, that's what, disappoints me the most about like the way we are with our security in the world today with Homeland Security, which relates to our next story coming up. But the fact that our borders are so tight and the immigration is so tight, like these kind of like hysterical, incredible stories don't really happen as much. I mean, she actually like got on a plane with 3 men to go and kidnap somebody that she didn't know.
And she took the supplies with her. She didn't get them when she got there. She had them in her suitcase.
So we could say this was premeditated.
Yeah, she admitted later that the abduction occurred due to her, and I quote, all-consuming passion for Anderson.
Hey, and she thought that they were brainwashing him.
Well, so McKinney and May jumped bail, and they fled the country. And on July 18th in 1979, they were both arrested in the United States by the FBI on charges of making false statements in order to obtain passports. And they both received suspended sentences.
So the two of them, you mean she and
Keith May.
Okay.
The one man that did stick with her, and I think that he's the one that actually did the chloroform. But
yeah, well, I mean, he was in it for the long haul.
yeah, and he was with her. I mean, I think he died in 2004, but he supported her and hung around with her and stuff until then.
Why not? She sounds like a ball of fun, to be honest.
Get bored. For sure. Well, so Britain didn't extradite her or anything, and the English court sentenced McKinney in absentia to a jail, 1 year in jail, and it fell under the Sexual Offense Act of 1956, and then in force in the United Kingdom that was due to the victim's gender. She didn't get charged with rape. She did get charged, though, with indecent assault of a man, which would be pretty embarrassing to be charged with, I think.
Oh, my gosh. So basically, it was a good time to be a woman in her situation.
Yeah, she got off scot-free.
I mean, wouldn't you say, like, women can be, maybe not as frequently, but, I mean, women can be seducers and predators. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think so. At least Joyce.
I mean, Joyce was the cinnamon oil. I mean, I'm not so bad, but the chloroform. I mean,
and he was handcuffed.
He was handcuffed, but it was mink lined.
Oh, perfect.
So but I mean, what if they would have gone overboard with the chloroform? What if they would have killed him? If he could have just.
Well, I'm sure she had some training, her nurse experience. I don't know.
That could be. She knew how. Maybe she'd done it before. I don't know.
Well, the thing about her, just seeing all of her interviews and doing some research, she's like completely unapologetic. And I think now, because like, there's definitely like a subversive community that supports her and encourages her. Whether they're laughing with her or laughing at her, I don't know. But I mean, you just never know the full story. But I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in that room, at least part of the time,
Right.
not during the kinky part.
I would have liked to see the look on his face when he came in the cottage and saw who was in there.
Well, later on, after this kind of all blew over, because she was like basically the headline of every paper in Europe during that period, and she was placed into a prison. But later on, I think one of her first boyfriends tried to sell lots of erotic photography that he had stored in his house for her, because when she left, she didn't know she was going to come back, and so this man sold a lot of those pictures to the tabloids, and I think she was pretty upset with that.
Well, I don't blame her.
She also came up in the news recently. I'll let you listen to a clip of this. It's totally unrelated to her her challenges in the UK with the Mormon boy. This is from CBS News.
I believed that Booger was an angel that God rented out to me for a short period of time. He knew I was going to have tough times, so he sent him down to help me out. And he knew I'd be lost without him, so he sent me some more. He sent me 5 more mini Boogers.
So she's been in the news recently. This was actually in 2008. So she had her dogs cloned in Korea, and now she has 5 little boogers.
Well, what's funny about that is that originally she, when some people recognized her on the news stories because of the cloning, and they asked if she was indeed the same woman that was involved with this Mormon boy, and she denied it at first.
She was tired of the attention, but you have to wonder, she's making it on world news twice in her life, totally unrelated, in a different, genre of news.
I mean, at least that time it didn't get, although cloning's kind of controversial, at least she didn't get called, to the carpet by the Church of Scotland's Working Party on Obscenity and Community Standards.
So she has some trouble all over the UK.
Oh boy!
But
yeah.
they love that at the same time.
Well, that's what they said. As a matter of fact, like Brian Whitaker of The Guardian observed that the case provided light relief for the newspaper reading public, and Roger Wilkes states that the coverage of the case cheered Britain up to no end.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, she definitely would make a good dinner guest, and she's still around. But it's kind of bizarre because even going from this large, news story and being this public figure, apparently now she lives pretty much almost in recluse, just in this little farm house, and obviously she changed her name. She doesn't want that attention.
Well, part of that might have been because I recall we watched a documentary that was filmed before the movie it's an amazing movie, before Tabloid, and she talked about some of her neighbors just absolutely hated her because of this, and they had done something to one of her service dogs, and he had kind of gone crazy over it. They'd injured him somehow or poisoned him, and he didn't recognize her. He was frothing at the mouth, and she was trying to help him, and he basically attacked her, and she was scarred really badly. So I think because of that, I guess you would call that, what is that, vigilantism kind
Right.
of? People meting out judgment.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that probably would make anybody not want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah, well, I wish her the best. It'd be nice to know the gentleman's story that she kidnapped, but I guess he's not really that willing to talk from what I understand.
No, he basically said that, like, the first time that he made it really sound like, it was all her and none of him, which, maybe it was. But here's another thing I want to throw in before we go to our next story, though, is that she was in the news in the Ukraine, or in Great Britain twice, and then in Korea. But she also stalked him later in life, and then she ended up in the Encyclopedia of Contemporary British Culture under sex scandals.
Wow.
So she's in the pages of history.
Yeah, she's been written into the books. Well, let's go ahead and take a little break on that note.
Okay.
And Joyce, if you're listening, give us a call, because we'd love to be your friend and take you out to dinner and just get to know more.
Absolutely.
Actually, she would be a great person to be in our cult. Or maybe
She
even be the
would.
person that we could, follow.
She could be the guru.
The guru. All right, we'll be back. Well, we're back, and we have a new story. This is a little bit of a more serious tone. Actually, it's very bizarre, and just because it's at least been a little bit of time, so we have separation, and we can, compartmentalize the bizarre within something really tragic. So, I mean, obviously, being from New York City, the story of 9/11, the experience of September 11, which changed the world. It's kind of personal to me, but at the time I was, 18 years old, so I wasn't right on top of the area where it happened, but I lived on 28th Street, and it's just all pretty much a blur. Within that blur, though, there was someone that was very determined and quick to take advantage of a bad situation.
Well, who was that?
Well, I'll get to that story in a moment. I mean, I'll get to the name, but I just want to, build it up because it's kind of too bizarre to believe. All right.
Do tell.
Right after September 11th, there was a woman from Spain, Alicia Estevez. She claims to have been in the South Tower of the World Trade Center when the first plane hit. She gave a vivid description of crawling through smoke and flames on the 78th floor of the South Tower.
Oh.
This would have made her one of only 19 people at or above the point of impact to have survived. She also claimed that her fiancé Dave was killed in the North Tower, though in later stories she said Dave was actually her husband. So this is one of the many, survivor stories that came out right after, this horrifying event that really...
There were so many. There were so many.
She was unique, though, because she wasn't, a family member or a friend of someone that survived. She really gave a first-hand account of being right there in the center of the action.
Oh, gee, that narrows it down to so few.
Well, it says 19 people that actually were above the point of impact, although, many others were able to escape from the floors below. And just an anecdote, I still really don't even go down there. I know they rebuilt, something that is sort of a tribute to the World Trade Center, but I don't know, it's just so sad. So Alicia also claimed that a dying man passed his wedding ring to her so it could be returned to his widow, and that she had been rescued by Wells Crowther, whose heroic actions on that day were wildly reported in the media. So she must have, been familiar with him. Head was interviewed in the media, invited to speak at university conferences, and in 2005 was chosen to lead tours for the Tribute World Trade Center Visitor, where she was photographed with New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg, former Mayor Rudy Giuliani, and former New York State Governor George Pataki. Head regularly recounted her claims to Ground Zero tour groups in vivid detail, saying, quote, I'll let you read this.
I was there at the towers. I am a survivor. I'm going to tell you about that.
She was featured in 9/11 articles, a representative of the 20,000 surviving victims who escaped the damaged buildings.
So she alone represented those 20,000 surviving victims?
Well, she was head of the organization and a very spirited leader at that. Apparently, she was really involved and responsible and thorough and really making calls, raising money, getting on the phone and bringing everyone together. She was, a cheerleader for these survivors, but also, maintained this profile as the poster child of the survivors.
I see.
Here's a little bit of her talking. This is from a National Geographic special.
I remember very well the pain of hitting the wall, the marble wall, and then I remember the warmth from the explosion.
September 2007, the New York Times sought to verify details of Head's story as part of an anniversary piece. Because of, obviously, anytime you're in the New York Times, whether it's because you won a football game or you had a baby, they're going to do some fact checks.
Sure.
Head claimed a degree from Harvard University, who hasn't lied about that, and a graduate business degree from Stanford, but these institutions have no record of her. She claimed she was working at Merrill Lynch in the World Trade Center, but Merrill Lynch had no record of her. Nor did Merrill Lynch have offices in the World Trade Center at the time of the attacks.
Something fishy.
Well, they must have had a bad memory because she backed out of 3 scheduled interviews and later refused to speak to reporters at all. Let's just describe her. We're looking at a picture of her right now. Yeah.
She looks pretty serious. She looks like she's got, I don't know, the look on her face. She's looking right directly into the camera.
Yeah, she either looks concerned or that she's like really concerned about keeping her story straight.
Yeah, well, remember when you were showing me those videos of people that were deducing somebody who was telling
Body
a lie?
language, yeah, analyze it.
She's not exhibiting any of those things that are sort of tells.
And she seems pretty confident, and that goes to show, like, even if you say a lie enough time, like, you start to believe it. So she must have really like channeled that. The interesting thing here, I'd like to just go backwards a little bit. Just the fact that she let's see, Head traveled to the United States for the first time in 2003, which is 2 years after the actual attack.
Wow.
So they didn't even have like a record of her ever being in the country. And I think that was like the, aside from the Merrill Lynch story and these other stories that can't be verified, like the fact that she had no stamp and a passport is pretty telling. So she came in 2003. The following, so she must have been claiming these, grievances from Spain where she lived, in Barcelona. But then she finally came back, or, the truth is that she came for the first time in 2003. The following year, that's when she joined the World Trade Center survivors. In 2004, after Gary Bogas, one of its founders, learned through word of mouth that a woman named Tanya Head had developed an internet group for 9/11 survivors. So this,
she started out on the internet.
Yeah, she started out on the internet. So she was pretty, resourceful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's pretty common today, but back then, I mean, most people on the internet were just, chatting on instant messenger.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's true.
After many months of email correspondence with Bogatz, she merged their groups. The network's purpose was to provide support for survivors in the aftermath of the attacks, as most public support was paid to a select group of victims' families, and first response. The organization intended to bring together and support those who were also affected by the attacks, including civilians present in the area at the time, as well as the personnel and volunteers involved in the extensive recovery and rescue efforts. She was never paid for these activities nor her involvement with the Survivors Network, and in fact, she donated money to the group.
Well, that means a lot to me because although I would have really actually rather have heard from an actual survivor, because somebody who actually was there could have been interviewed and been the face of it. At least she didn't go for the almighty dollar. That makes it even kookier, kind of, because what was she doing?
Well, there's interviews that I've seen, which people actually answer that question. They feel like, we all have an innate desire to be involved with something bigger than ourselves, whether it's a group of friends or a church or school. You have the desire to, not only want to belong, but also be of service to others. And it sort of foreshadows on, another topic I'd love to cover, which is Rachel Dolezal from, Pacific Northwest, who sort of willed herself to be, an African-American woman, not to, denigrate or make fun of a culture, but she actually really wanted to be that, or wants to be that, identify as a black woman, and go so far as to teach African American studies, advocate for African Americans, and really put her name out there to help them. So I don't know, it is really bizarre that someone in Spain would see this tragedy and then either exploit it or else want to, put themselves at the center of it and
You know
be a
what?
spokesperson.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I remember you telling me when you said you were going to be researching this story, kind of like you were talking about Rachel right now. You had told me that she didn't, when she was in Barcelona, she talked to her classmates about always wanting to go to New York and to work into New York, and maybe she just saw that as her opportunity to get to New York City and be someone, and figured somebody would hire her maybe.
Right, because who's going to really question, a victim of September 11, especially then, it's 2001, and the confusion and the chaos of everything. I mean, if you really go back to that time, I mean, my first thought was, are there more attacks coming? Are there more airplanes? Is the draft going to start, tomorrow? Are we all going to war? And
Oh yeah, you would have been right in that age.
yeah. So it was a really bizarre thing that she, that she had the chutzpah to go for this.
Well, people were still really reeling, and nobody was ever gonna if you. And she had some scarring on her hands, on her arms too. I remember you saying. So nobody really thought about, well, I'm gonna look into her background. I mean, everyone was just putting their arms around each other and uniting as a community to get through this and to galvanize.
It's like going to a funeral and questioning, a family member of somebody, surrounding something tragic in that moment. I mean, that was not a great metaphor. All right, where
Well,
is
I get
she
what you
now?
mean, though. That makes sense, though.
Well, where is Miss Alicia now? Okay, so the last that she kind of hit the news was in 2012. Apparently, she was fired from a position at her inter-partner assistant, an insurance company in Barcelona. Once her employers found out about her, quote, ruse in New York. So I guess that all of the documentaries and news coverage really caught up with her. Since then, there hasn't been a lot of activity, public, but some people claim that she's hiding in plain sight. She obviously joined Twitter, if this is a real profile. That was in 2014. I guess you have to be accepted by her to see all her tweets, her 1,000 tweets. But she is an avid skier, a horse rider, horse advocate, loves taking photos, road trips, swimming, and coastal living. The beach charges my batteries, says her Twitter profile.
Gee, our hands look identical.
I don't know, because
What
I
does
bit
that
my
mean?
nails, so I can't tell how long they are.
But your ring finger's longer than mine.
Huh.
Our other fingers are are the same length, but your
But
ring finger is
your
longer
index
than
is
mine.
longer than your ring finger.
Yeah.
So you're basically, you have a lot of estrogen.
Oh.
Yeah. And I have a lot of testosterone, so
Okay. Well,
can't make
there's merit
it.
to that story then.
Well, let's see. Back to Miss Head. She's been traveling all around, or else, she swims with dolphins. See? Perfect.
Wow.
I think that's enough information about that woman. I think all of our listeners will probably want to go ahead and find out more information about her. But we thank you for listening to our podcast tonight. This is Johnny.
And Diane.
And you were listening to
Paranoid
Fantasy,
Fantasies.
the podcast about bizarre things
And the people involved.